My name is Tessa Monroe. I'm 17 years old, and for most of my life, I thought my family was normal. Strict, yes. Religious, absolutely. But not broken. At least that's what I told myself every time I watched my parents isolate my older sister Ivy, twist her words and call her ungrateful. Every time they screamed in her face and told her she needed professional help. Every time my mom cried and clutched her Bible, whispering that Ivy was not right in the head. I believed them because it was easier than facing the truth. Growing up as the youngest meant I learned to be invisible, speak only when spoken to, smile when company came over, wear the long skirts, say grace at the table, and never ever question Dad's rules. Because when Ivy questioned them, things got dangerous. I used to watch her from the corner of the room, the way her hands would tighten when our father made some sexist comment or when he spoke to our brother Caleb like he was the heir to the throne and to me like I was some broken toy. Ivy was the only one who ever stood up to him, and for that she was painted as the villain. I remember one summer, we were at a church retreat in Cannon Beach. I was 12. Ivy was 15. I had just come out of the water, wearing denim shorts and a t-shirt still soaked from bodyboarding. Dad looked at me, smirked, and said in front of everyone, "You better stop eating so much. That belly's poking out." Then he tugged at my waistband and muttered something about modesty. Ivy's voice cut through the chatter like a lightning strike. "Did you seriously just say that to her?" She snapped, staring at him like he was something filthy. Our mom hissed at her to lower her voice. People were watching. Ivy's outburst was the problem, not Dad's comment. "You're always looking for a reason to make drama," Mom whispered harshly. And I said nothing. I was humiliated, but I was more afraid of being on the receiving end of their wrath. So when everyone started blaming Ivy for ruining the retreat, I stayed quiet. Or worse, I agreed. I told her to calm down. I told her she made things worse. I hate myself for that now. But at the time, I was still convinced that Ivy was unstable. That if she could just stop overreacting, maybe we'd finally be a happy family again. She left for college at 18, and I didn't miss her. Not at first. The house was quieter without her yelling. No slammed doors, no confrontations. Just quiet dinners and morning devotionals and chore charts. I mistook the silence for peace. It wasn't. Because not long after she left, I started to notice that the quiet only lasted as long as I was perfect. One missed homework assignment? I was lazy. One wrong tone in my voice? I was disrespectful. One question about going out with friends? I was turning into Ivy. And Caleb, he was no help. He just stared at his phone or nodded along with whatever Dad said. He used to be kind, but the older he got, the more he mimicked Dad's coldness. I didn't realize it yet, but Ivy wasn't the one breaking the family. She was the only one trying to save it. By the time I was 16, I knew exactly how to walk on eggshells. I had mastered the art of shrinking myself. Never too loud, never too opinionated, never too anything. Because I'd learned that the moment I stood out, I became the problem. At first, I thought maybe I was imagining it. The way my dad's eyes narrowed when I asked about volunteering at the animal shelter. The way my mom's tone dropped an octave when I didn't respond to her texts fast enough. The way Caleb could ignore all the chores, roll his eyes at dinner, and still be praised as going through a phase, while I was reprimanded for forgetting to set the table. I started to feel the shift slowly, like fog creeping into a room you didn't realize had a window open. It started with small comments. "You're getting too emotional lately, Tess. Why can't you be more like Caleb?" He never talks back. You're going to give your mother a heart attack with all that attitude. The silence that used to feel like peace now felt like pressure. Like the weight of everyone's expectations was building and I was suffocating under it. And the worst part was, I had no one. Ivy was off living her life. I didn't know where exactly. She'd stopped posting on social media and only sent me the occasional text. I usually ignored them. I told myself she was just trying to stir things up again, trying to drag me into her chaos. But deep down, a part of me missed her. I started journaling at night, not because I thought anyone would ever read it, but because I needed somewhere to put the things I wasn't allowed to say. Like how my dad had started slamming doors when I spoke too quietly, or how my mom would bring up Ivy every time I upset her. Like a ghost, she used to keep me in line. "You're just like your sister," she'd say, her voice tight with disdain. One night, I asked Caleb if he ever felt like the house was off. I didn't say abusive. I wasn't ready to use that word yet. But something felt broken, and I thought maybe, just maybe, he felt it too. He looked at me like I was an idiot. "I don't know what your problem is," he said flatly. "You act like Dad's the only parent who gets mad." And that was that. The next morning, I found my journal on the kitchen counter, open. A sticky note on the page that said, "Watch your words, you don't want to end up like Ivy." It wasn't signed, it didn't need to be. That night, I buried the journal deep in the trash bin under eggshells and coffee grounds. I sat on the cold tile floor afterward, just staring at the cabinet under the sink, tears silently slipping down my cheeks. I didn't want to be like Ivy. I didn't want to be the crazy one, the loud one, the one who ruined everything. But slowly, I was starting to wonder if maybe she hadn't been the problem at all. It happened on a Thursday evening. We had just finished dinner. Meatloaf, overcooked green beans, and the usual tension served on the side. I cleared the plates while Caleb vanished to his room and my mom sat down to watch some Christian talk show, pretending nothing was wrong, like always. I accidentally dropped a glass while rinsing it. It shattered against the sink, pieces bouncing onto the floor like sparks from a fire. The silence that followed was suffocating. I stood frozen, staring at the broken shards, my hands trembling. My dad stormed in from the garage, probably halfway through one of his cheap beers. His eyes landed on the mess. "What the hell is wrong with you?" he barked. It slipped," I stammered, already reaching for paper towels. He snatched them from my hand and threw them across the room. "You don't get to be careless in this house. That glass was part of your grandmother's set. She'd be disgusted with you." I knew that was a lie. My grandmother died before I was born. But it didn't matter. Logic never mattered when he was angry. "I'm sorry," I said quickly, trying to shrink, to disappear. But sorry wasn't enough. He stepped toward me, fast. I backed up into the counter, heart pounding in my chest like a drumline. His finger jabbed at my forehead. "You're becoming just like her," he snarled, full of attitude, talking back, stirring things up. "You think I don't see it?" I didn't say anything. I couldn't. My throat closed up like it always did when fear flooded my body. Then, without warning, he shoved me. Hard. I stumbled backwards and slammed into the edge of the kitchen table, pain blooming across my ribs. I cried out, more in shock than anything, but he was already towering over me again. "You want to cry now? You think crying's going to fix your damn attitude?" I must have made some kind of noise, maybe a whimper, maybe a breath too sharp, because he suddenly pushed me again. This time, I fell over one of the chairs and hit the floor with a thud. I couldn't breathe. My lungs stuttered, my vision blurred, and in that moment, something inside me broke. I scrambled to my feet and ran. I didn't know where I was going. I just knew I had to get away from him. I locked myself in this downstairs bathroom and collapsed against the tub, sobbing so hard my whole body shook. I reached for my phone. There was only one person I could think to call, Ivy. When she answered, I didn't say anything at first. Just cried. Just let the panic move through me in waves. But she knew. Her voice was soft, steady. "Tess," she said, "tell me what happened." And I did. Every detail. The glass, the yelling, the push. She didn't gasp. She didn't freak out. She just listened. And when I finished, she asked the only question that mattered. "Do you want me to come get you?" I hesitated. My father's voice boomed from the other side of the bathroom door, ordering me to come clean the kitchen. "Yes," I whispered. "Please." "Okay," she said. 20 minutes. Be ready." And just like that, the countdown began. I stayed curled on the cold bathroom floor, every muscle in my body tight with fear and adrenaline. I could hear my dad stomping around outside the door, muttering about disrespectful girls and God's punishment. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I kept checking the time. 18 minutes. 12. 9. Then silence. And then the softest sound. A quiet creak of the front door opening. I held my breath. Seconds later, a voice I hadn't heard in months whispered through the hallway. "Tess?" It was Ivy. I slowly unlocked the bathroom door and stepped out. She stood there in a hoodie and jeans, her hair tied back, eyes locked on mine. Behind her stood a tall man I didn't recognize at first. A friend of hers, maybe. He looked strong, calm, like he was there for one reason only: to protect her. And now, me. My first instinct was to freeze, to retreat. I was terrified of what would happen if my dad saw her. I can't leave," I said, barely above a whisper. He's passed out," she said gently. "I heard him snoring on the couch. He's not waking up tonight." Still, I hesitated. Ivy stepped forward and took my hand. Her grip was firm, warm, reassuring. "You don't have to stay here anymore," she said. I looked back, just once. The dim living room light cast long shadows across the floor. It felt like a haunted house, one I'd been trapped in for years. Then I looked at Ivy and stepped outside. The air was sharp and cold, hitting my lungs like the first real breath I'd taken in weeks. Her friend opened the car door for me without a word. I climbed in, clutching my backpack like it was a lifeline. We didn't speak much on the drive. Ivy kept glancing at me from the driver's seat, checking if I was okay. Her friend sat quietly in the back, alert but respectful. It felt unreal, like I was in a movie where I didn't know the ending. 15 minutes later, we pulled into the lot of a small apartment complex on the edge of town. Ivy led me up a narrow staircase to a door at the very end of the hall. Inside was a tiny one-bedroom apartment, sparse, clean, safe. "You're staying here with me for now," Ivy said, dropping my backpack onto the couch. "I've been renting it for a few months." "You planned this?" I asked, stunned. She shrugged. "I hoped I wouldn't have to. But I wasn't going to leave you behind." That night, I didn't want to talk. I just needed to feel normal. So I told her I had a Halloween party planned for the next day at school, something I'd been excited about for weeks. Ivy didn't question it. She ordered us both McDonald's, let me borrow a t-shirt to sleep in, and left the light on in the hallway all night, just in case. For the first time in what felt like forever, I fell asleep without fear. But peace doesn't come that easily. Not when you've escaped a house that thrives on control. Because the next morning, everything would change again. I woke up to the smell of coffee and the low hum of a kettle boiling. For a few disoriented seconds, I forgot where I was. The apartment was so quiet. No banging cabinet doors, no dad shouting from the living room, no mom pacing the kitchen muttering Bible verses under her breath. Just Ivy sitting at the table, scrolling through her phone like it was a normal Saturday morning. But peace was short-lived. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice, then again. When I picked it up, I saw 5 missed texts from my mom. "Where are you?" "Sarah's mom says you never showed up. You have 10 minutes to respond or your father is going to lose it." A chill ran through me. My thumbs trembled. Ivy looked up as I stood in the doorway, my phone glowing in my hand. "Let me guess," she said, already knowing. "They're freaking out?" I nodded. "She's saying I never went to Sarah's. She's demanding I come home." Ivy's face didn't flinch. "You're not going back." But I told her I would be back by noon for chores, I said, the panic rising. "She's going to be even worse now. They're going to think you kidnapped me." "Let them," Ivy replied, her voice calm and sharp. "They've been holding you hostage for years." The thing is, I almost believed her. But old guilt dies hard. And deep down, part of me still thought maybe I was the problem. At 11:30 a.m., the texts turned to threats. "He's coming to look for you. I warned you. You'll regret this. Your sister has poisoned your mind. You're destroying this family. Just like she did." I sat down at the table across from Ivy, barely tasting the toast she made me. I could feel the moment building like a storm cloud about to burst. "I have to go back," I whispered. She didn't yell. She didn't scold me. She just looked me in the eye and said, "If you go back, you won't survive it." And I believed her. But none of it prepared me for what happened when I did go back. Because I did go. Not to stay, but to say goodbye. That evening, I walked through the door just before dusk. My mom was waiting in the kitchen, arms crossed, face blank. "You made a mess," she said coldly. "Now clean it up." My dad was already standing in the hallway, a shadow in the dim light. "Where the hell were you?" he growled. Before I could speak, his palm came down across my face with a force I'd never felt before. I didn't scream. I just collapsed. The world spun and narrowed. The floor caught me, and then I was gone. When I came to, there was blood in my mouth and a ringing in my ears. I looked up and saw my dad looming over me. "You think you're strong now?" he said. "Think again." I didn't cry. I stood, wobbling, dizzy, but I stood. "I want to leave," I said, the words trembling but clear. "I'm not staying, not another night." He laughed like it was a joke, but I walked past him, out the door. I didn't run this time. I didn't flinch when he slammed the wall or when my mother shrieked about what I was doing to the family. I kept walking. And Ivy was waiting just around the corner, headlights on, engine running. She opened the passenger door. I climbed in, one hand on the bruise swelling along my jaw. "Are you ready now?" she asked. I didn't have to say it, because I was. Ivy didn't ask me anything on the drive back. She didn't need to. My silence told her everything: the busted lip, the bruise blooming down the side of my face, the way I kept one hand pressed against my ribs, wincing when the car hit a bump. It was all there. She drove straight through town and didn't stop until we were parked in front of her apartment again. The lights from the corner store across the street cast a dim glow on the dashboard. Neither of us moved. Then Ivy reached across the console and turned off the engine. She faced me. "I want you to do something," she said gently, "not for me, for yourself." "What?" I whispered. She pulled out an old iPod from her glove box. "You're going to start recording him. Every time he yells, every threat, every slap, you get it on here." I stared at the device like it was something foreign, but Ivy's eyes didn't waver. "People won't believe us unless we show them, so we're going to show them." That night, I lay in Ivy's bed, staring at the ceiling, clutching the iPod in my hand like it was a weapon. I didn't sleep. Not because I wasn't tired, but because I finally had something I hadn't had in a long time: a plan. Over the next few days, I returned to the house with the lie that I'd come crawling back. I went through the motions: chores, dinner, silence, but I kept the iPod hidden in my jacket. And I recorded everything. Dad screaming about how I was dead weight, Mom accusing me of spying for Ivy, Caleb mumbling under his breath that I should have stayed gone. I recorded the slaps, the cruel words, the crash of broken dishes. Ivy taught me how to clip the recordings and upload them to a hidden drive. She had an entire system set up, like she'd been preparing for this since she was my age. And slowly, we built a case. A digital timeline of a home that looked perfect on the outside, but was rotting from the inside out. The more I recorded, the clearer everything became. I started seeing what I had refused to see for years: that Ivy had never been crazy. She had just refused to be silent. One night, as I sat on the couch uploading the latest clip, Ivy came over and handed me her laptop. "Write your story," she said. "Tell it all. Start from the beginning. We're going to post it." "Online?" "Yes," she said. "But not under your name, not yet, just enough for people to hear you. For them to know this happens." I hesitated, but the words came easier than I expected. It poured out of me. Every insult, every bruise, every cold glance from our mother, every time someone said I was overreacting. We included audio clips. Not all of them. Just enough. When we hit publish, I didn't know what would happen. Maybe nothing. Maybe it would get buried. But it didn't. By morning, the post had over 3,000 shares. By nightfall, it was trending, and then the calls started. People from church, family we hadn't spoken to in years, even Ivy's old high school friends. Some wanted to deny it. Others just wanted to say they were sorry for not seeing it sooner. But a few, just a few, offered help. One of them was Aunt Denise, our mom's estranged sister. "I always knew something wasn't right with your father," she said over the phone. "Tell me what you need. I'm here." And just like that, the silence began to crack. For a few days, it felt like we were finally breathing air after being underwater for years. People were listening. Ivy and I sat at her tiny dining table, sorting through emails, messages, and reposts of the blog. Survivors from all over the country shared their own stories, thanking us for being brave enough to speak out. Some offered legal contacts. Others just offered solidarity. It was overwhelming, but for the first time, I didn't feel alone. But of course, the peace didn't last. By the third day, the retaliation began. My mom sent a furious email dripping with guilt and accusations. She said I had humiliated the family, destroyed their reputation, broken her heart. She called Ivy a manipulator, a liar, a disgrace. Then came the threats. A voicemail from Dad, voice low and venomous. You better pray you don't come back here. You think the world cares about your little sob story? You don't know what real consequences look like. We sent everything to Ivy's lawyer friend, screenshots, voicemails, timestamps. Ivy had thought of everything. I just had to trust her. Then came the final blow. Someone knocked on the apartment door late at night. We froze. Ivy peered through the peephole and cursed under her breath. "It's Uncle Brad," she said. She opened the door just a crack. He stood there in his pressed work shirt, trying to look calm, like he wasn't here to scare us into silence. "You've gone too far," he said, his voice low and cold. "You're tearing the family apart. For what? For attention?" Ivy didn't flinch. The family was already broken. We just stopped pretending. His jaw tightened. "I know what your dad did," he hissed, barely loud enough to hear. "But you don't get to burn it all down just because you're angry." Ivy stared at him. "You knew?" Her voice cracked with disbelief. "You knew and you did nothing?" He didn't answer, just turned and walked away like he hadn't just confirmed everything. The next morning, I woke up to a message from Caleb. "You've ruined everything. Don't expect anything when he dies." No, "Hi." No, "Are you okay?" Just a warning. A threat disguised as a guilt trip. I showed Ivy my stomach in knots. She didn't even blink. "That's Dad talking," she said. "He's using Caleb the same way he used us. You're not responsible for that." I wanted to believe her, but I was scared. What if this never ended? What if my story went public, but they still found a way to drag me back? That afternoon, I sat in the hallway outside Ivy's bathroom, knees pulled to my chest, heart pounding. And then it hit me. They weren't fighting because I was wrong. They were fighting because I finally had power, and they were terrified of what I'd do with it. It had been nearly a month since I left home, and yet some days I still woke up expecting to hear my dad's boots stomping across the hallway. Trauma doesn't disappear just because you're safe. It lingers, it echoes, but each day the ohs got quieter. Ivy and I moved again, this time to a smaller apartment in a different part of town. No one knew the address except for her lawyer and Aunt Denise. It was the first place I'd ever lived where I didn't feel like I had to hold my breath all the time. The post continued to circulate. Ivy's inbox flooded with media inquiries and anonymous messages. Some were supportive, others were hateful, but I'd expected that. What I didn't expect was how many people really saw us for the first time. Friends I thought had forgotten me reached out. A girl from my old school sent a voice message crying, saying she never knew and that her own stepfather had done the same things. Even our old youth pastor messaged Ivy. He apologized for believing our parents' version of events and offered to speak out on our behalf if we ever wanted to pursue legal action. And then something happened I hadn't anticipated. I started to feel free. Not all at once, but slowly, subtly, I stopped flinching when someone raised their voice. I started laughing again. Really laughing, not that forced smile I wore at home. I began drawing again, something I hadn't done since I was 14. I applied to volunteer at an animal shelter, and they said yes. I even enrolled in a new school under Ivy's guardianship. No more lies, no more pretending. One night, Ivy brought home a cake. It was small, lopsided, clearly homemade. "What's this for?" I asked, eyeing it suspiciously. She lit a single candle and smiled. "Your freedom anniversary," she said. "1 month since you walked out the front door." I laughed, really laughed, and blew out the candle with a quiet wish that I'd never feel that powerless again. And then I made a decision. I went back to the blog post, the one we'd published anonymously, and I edited it. I added my name, Tessa Monroe. I wanted the world to know that I wasn't ashamed anymore, that they couldn't use my silence as a shield for their cruelty, that I was done protecting people who had never protected me. That post exploded. Not because I was famous, not because I was special, but because I had spoken what so many others were still too afraid to say. And in the days that followed, something amazing happened. Other girls, other kids, started sharing their stories. They referenced mine. They said, "If Tessa could speak up, maybe I can too." It was the most terrifying and empowering feeling of my life. My parents never stopped trying to twist the narrative. They said I was mentally ill, that Ivy had brainwashed me, that the bruises were makeup, the recordings were edited. But the more they tried to deny it, the more obvious their desperation became. Eventually, people stopped believing them. Their friends stopped coming around. Their church issued a public statement distancing itself from them. My dad lost his contractor license. My mom deactivated all her social media. And one day, I got a final text from my mother. "I hope someday you'll forgive us." I didn't reply. Not because I'm cruel, but because healing belongs to me now, not to them. I spent so long being afraid of their voices, but now I have my own, and it's louder than their silence ever was.